So we got another beautiful blue sky sunny day here in Finland, and it's like the perfect day really to talk about a particular phenomenon. You can also hear some birds, a lot of birds around, bright sun, and I think there is maybe one cloud over there, but as you can see, otherwise the cloud is completely well, you just basically got blue sky. Show you the ground here. So, you know, a month ago we still had some snow, like a whole winter's worth of snow melted, but the ground now looks absolutely bone dry because we've hardly had any rain at all. So what I'm going to talk about is this topic of chemtrails. So I first came across this term probably about 10 years ago when I was still teaching. And there was a guy that used to work in the kitchens. He was a Portuguese guy called Jose. And he was I'm not sure about his own schooling and education, but he was an avid reader. He taught himself economics. He was a really interesting guy. And he kept on talking to me about chemtrails. And, you know, as I say, it was at least 10 years ago. And at the time I thought, well, Jose, you've got some like good things to say about most things, but you know, this chemtrail thing, it seems a little bit too far, you know, it's a stretch too far. So anyway, you know, around that time, as I say, I was teaching. So thinking about it, the weather patterns were pretty fixed as I remember them. So June in particular, June and the first half of July were often, you know, very nice in the UK back then. Hot, dry, perfect summer weather. But then as soon as the school holidays would start, it would cloud over and it would be cloudy for most of the 6 weeks that we were away from school, and then blow me down as soon as the school holidays ended. The sun would come back out. Now back then, you know, I'd kind of knew about all the dodgy stuff in the Middle East and Dr. David Kelly and all of that, but I wasn't as fully awake as I am now. So I kind of thought, oh, this is I had no idea about weather modification, but it's now beyond doubt that that's basically what was going on. The weather was being modified. They wanted to create dull, cloudy weather during the summer holidays when kids were off school. And that's what they managed to create. And I think, yes, it was 2 years ago, the first time I went back to England after, you know, living in Finland for a week holiday. And I said to my wife, no, it was last September actually. I said to her, like, what we need to do is to go back the first week of September, because I'd remembered, you see, as a teacher, every single 1st of September when the schools go back, the clouds would go and we had fantastic weather. So guess what happened in September 23 when we visited England and stayed in Manchester? Answer, we had fantastic weather. It was like blue sky like this and really hot. There's a bee there. I think I'll show you. I'll show you a bee. You can see him. So this thing about chemtrails. Actually, the time before I went and visited England, so that would have been October 22, I took some photographs. I was in London, and that was the first time I actually saw these grid patterns being made out in the sky. Now, I don't know whether those were there prior to 2022, and it was just that I wasn't looking up and noticing in them. But certainly, I really noticed them then. So do chemtrails exist? I would actually say yes, they do exist. Are they chemtrailing everywhere? I would say no, they're not. It's very rare that I see anything that looks dodgy here in southwest Finland. So why is that? Well, I think the simple reason is that they just lack capacity. You know, if you're going to do geomodification, you're going to need an awful lot of aircraft to actually put the lines in the sky and spray the stuff. And you've also got a lot of sky rather to cover. You know, the Earth is a huge place. So I don't think they actually have the infrastructure, the capacity to put the lines up everywhere. So where do they put the lines? Answer is, I think, first and foremost, they put them in parts of the world that they want to attack. You know, namely parts of the world where there's a very high population density. You know, then they're going to get more chemtrail bang for their. Second thing I've been thinking about is actually how do they do it, you know. Again, I'm just thinking about a capacity issue. You know, even if you had designated planes flying, they'd need to be in the sky 24/7 to do the amount of chemtrailing that I actually see on social media sites like Twitter, in places like Britain. So what I've been thinking about is maybe it's actually civil airliners that are doing some of it. You know, would it be possible to add substances to jet fuel that would create these geoengineering trails? The thing to think about is, like, why are they doing it? So some people say it's like they're spreading poison. For me, I don't buy into that, for the simple reason that the Satanists would also be affected by the poison spreading, because, you know, you've got plenty of organisers living in the UK, and the UK is being heavily chemtrailed, so, you know, they would also be affected by their tactics too. It's similar to sort of the idea of shedding. I also dismiss that for the same reason. You're not going to create a Britney Spears and a booster that's leaky, that's going to damage the health of people that didn't go to that particular concert through this concept of shedding. So for me, basic logic tells me that to rule out shedding. So why are they doing it? Well, I think they're doing it because the sun is good for people. It's a way to damage our health. And also to kind of like depress us. Basically, the sun makes people happy. It raises people's spirits, and this would also seem to make sense in the you know, when they actually were doing it most intensively. When I noticed it in Britain was in the school holidays. So again, all about getting maximum bang for the. Just thought of one more idea. Maybe the other motivation for chemtrailing is to actually create climate change, and using the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, they can then say to the plebs, look how cloudy and horrible the weather is. It's all the result of too many planes. So therefore, if you want your good weather back, you're going to have to give up your foreign holidays, or have some sort of carbon credit, personalised digital ID linked to social credit scores, rationing flying. It could be that too. I think as well, in the countries that are being heavily chemtrailed, it's going to affect the productivity of land. There are going to be fewer crops grown in the UK if it's constantly dark and rainy, and so that could be part of it too, is to create food shortages in selected parts of the world. And again, you know, I think for many people, you just have to accept the fact that you know, after Brexit, Britain's been in for a punishment beating. There's no other way to describe it other than that. You know, the EU, I think, is just was a forerunner of their kind of global government model. It was a test bed, and you know, the British people really upset the globalists by voting to leave the European Union. So I think since then, the UK has come in for a massive punishment beating on many different fronts. Obviously, there's the rubber boat people and the hotels and all of that. But that isn't happening in other countries, you know. And the chemtrailing in the UK, the constant bad weather, from what I hear, is also seems to be something that's pretty unique to the UK. And it fits in with this theory that I have of the UK getting a punishment beating over Brexit, over the plebs voting against globalism. It will be quite interesting to see what happens, you know, at the next election, if and when it's held. You know, to see what Starmer does, whether he tries to take Britain back into the EU. But you know, going back to the topic of the day, the chemtrailing things, not all clouds are chemtrails. I think some people get a bit carried away with that. Let's see if I can find one now. You know, there's a cloud there. Oh, there's one above here. You know, those aren't chemtrails, those are just naturally occurring clouds. I don't think the chemtrailing is about poisoning people per se. I think it's all about trying to damage people's health through depriving them of vitamin C. So, you know, if I was living in the UK, one thing that I might consider would be a sun lamp. You know, maybe people like Tony Blair and the other globalists, you know, they can insulate themselves against the effects of chemtrailing by just using sun lamps. That's certainly something that I would definitely be considering if I was living in the UK, where there's been an awful lot of chemtrailing. And yeah, I think that's all I want to say today, so God bless.